Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. To distract from the fact that my cat is going into surgery and I'm really in debt from that, we are going to go to my local libraries and do some book shopping at them. I don't tend to buy a lot of books. I usually use my library, and then if I really like a book, I will buy it. So today we are going to be going to 3 different library locations in my area. We are going to check out what each of them has and go from there. The first location is the main library, and then the other locations, one is near my house, one is a little bit further away, and those two are like the smaller locations. There is a 4th location, but it's kind of a ways away, and I don't really want to travel all that way, so we're gonna ignore that one. But these 3 that we're going to are hopefully going to have some good stuff. I'm looking for some manga and I'm looking for some fantasies. Last time I went to the library, I kind of started in the general fiction section, started with the first row, didn't really get a whole lot that I liked. So we're gonna go for a round 2 and hopefully find some stuff. So we are at my work. So I have to drive about 45 minutes to get home. So we're gonna start at the big main library location and then go to the other smaller locations. So let's get started. I'm back home now. I had to handle some things with my cat, so I wasn't able to go to the 3rd location, but we are back home with about 20 books. So I want to go over them with you, and I also want to do the mid-year book freakout tag. It's basically just like a check-in. It's very popular in the book side of YouTube, and it'll be my first year not doing it, so I wanted to do it, and I thought I would include it in this book related video. So first question is the best book that I've read this year. I talked at length about this question in one of my recent videos, so I'm just going to link that down below. But I would have to say my best book of the year is 7 Days in June. This is a second chance romance. It's absolutely stunning, and I'm very excited to check out more from this author. It involves a single mom and a relationship with a guy that she had when she was a teenager. Very, very heavy hitting, very beautiful. Absolutely loved it. So we will talk about our first 2 books. So when I went to the library, I pretty much exclusively stayed in the sci-fi fantasy section. I was going to go to the manga section, but one thing about me is if there is someone in a section that I want to go to, I will avoid it. So there was someone in the manga section in the main library that I went to, and so I didn't go. And then the second library location that I went to, I couldn't find the manga section. So mostly we have all sci-fi books. Actually, not mostly. I think they all are sci-fi books. So first up we have The Race. This is about a child who is kidnapped across worlds, and in a future scarred by fracking and ecological collapse, Jenna's world is dominated by illegal smart dog racing greyhounds genetically modified with human DNA. When her young niece goes missing, her world explodes. So this says it is very strange, unique, and evocative and compelling. I thought it might be interesting. I'm not one for like family drama, and this sort of mystery isn't super interesting to me, but I saw the word strange and I picked it up, so we'll see. And then we have Hawk of May. So first of all, the first thing that caught my eye was this cover. King Arthur retelling. It says it recreates the world of King Arthur. It transports you back to the Dark Ages when warring kings still divided the realm. And he sought to unite Britons under his leadership, his nephew doing stuff. I absolutely love King Arthur stories, retellings, things like that, so I'm very excited to get into this. I wanted to read The Mists of Avalon, and one of the locations had it, but I wanted something a little bit newer and maybe a little less dense, so I might go back to Mists of Avalon depending on how well this does for me. So next question is the best sequel that I have read this year, and that is definitely Children of the Fallen Gods. This is the second book in the War of Lost Hearts series, and it's absolutely fantastic. I definitely personally feel pretty distant from the series as a whole, but I think if you are looking for a fantasy romance series with a fantastic and inventive plot and fantastic writing, I would definitely recommend that series. I haven't read the last one, so I don't know how the series concludes, but the first two books, the first one was a 4-star, the second one was a 5-star, so the series is just amazing. So next two books we have are Shadow of the Gods, and I don't quite know what this one is about. I'm assuming it has something to do with possibly dragons, and I have just heard amazing things about this author. I do know this is Norse inspired, and it's something to do with gods, and battle and things like that. I have this book on this and Malice by him on audio, so I probably will listen and read at the same time, but I thought I saw it in the library and I thought I should give it a shot. So next up we have The Spite House. This is, I believe, a haunted house story about a guy who goes on the run with his children. It says a terrifying gothic thriller about grief, death, and the depths of a father's love. It's a debut, so if I enjoy this author's writing, I would definitely check out more, but I'm all for a haunted house story. Next up, we have Biggest Disappointment, and that would definitely be Chain of Thorns, the final book in the Last Hours trilogy by Cassandra Clare. I had very high expectations for this. I've loved the trilogy in general, and I knew that this book was quite long, and I was hoping that all of the unresolved issues that we had were going to be resolved and that this would be a satisfying conclusion. But by the time that I had actually picked up the book, I knew that it had very mixed reviews. It didn't seem like a lot of people really enjoyed it, so I tried to temper my expectations going in, and unfortunately I ended up giving it 2 stars. It was really drawn out, and all of the drama, interpersonal drama, was really recycled. I felt like we lost a lot of the character growth that we had gotten the first 2 books. We lost a lot of personality in our main character in particular, and it was just overly long, and the ending was very unsatisfying. So I'm happy that she is not concluding the Shadowhunter Chronicles with this book. I'm happy that there is going to be a last trilogy just to bring the world together, because if this had been the conclusion to a series that I had been reading my entire life, I would have been even more upset than I already was. But I'm happy that she is doing another trilogy, because it was incredibly disappointing, especially for a book that I was really, really excited about. I reread the first 2 books, which are both over 600 pages, the end of last year in anticipation of the third one. So it definitely was a disappointment for sure. Alright, so next up we have A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie. Now I have heard, kind of just like John Gwynne, I've heard a lot about Joe Abercrombie. He wrote the, what is that? I'll flash it on the screen, but it's an incredibly popular series. My library didn't have that series, but they did have this, and this is the first book in a series. So I am excited to get into this one. It sounds like it's a lot of war and political intrigue, so we'll see how this goes when we get into it. And then we also have The Bear and the Nightingale. So this is I didn't realize this was adult. I thought this was young adult, but I know this is based on, I tried to read it previously. I know this is based on like Russian mythology, and I believe that the main character is a young girl and she maybe gets the attention of a god or something along those lines. When she gets a new stepmom, and maybe she doesn't like the stepmom. I might be butchering what this book is about, but I have heard good things, and when I tried to pick it up previously, I just wasn't like in a fantasy mood. So hopefully this go round I will enjoy it. All right, so next up was The Biggest Surprise. And the next 3 questions are all going to be covered by the same book slash author. So we'll kind of just talk about them in tandem, and then we'll talk about 6 books. So Biggest Surprise would be The Serpent and the Wings of Night. New favorite author would be Carissa Broadbent, and my new favorite character is Rain, who is the love interest in The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night a couple of months ago, and I wasn't really anticipating to love it as much as I did. It is a fantasy romance centered around vampires, and the main character was orphaned and taken in by the leader of the vampires. And the world is very complex and rich. You can tell that the author put a lot of thought into the lore behind her characters. There's 2 different types of vampires, and there's lore for each type, and there's a bunch of like political intrigue and interactions between the different types of vampires, and the main character is attempting to participate in this event that will grant her a wish, and her wish is to be bonded to her vampire adopted father so that she can have the vampire powers without actually being turned. And she has a romance with a guy who she works with during the tournament, and it's fantastic. Carissa Broadbent's writing is just so captivating and so accessible. Her world feels so rich, and there's so much lore and understanding behind her characters behind her worlds that you feel like she put so much effort into, and I really appreciate that. And I think Rain is sort of that fascinating character where you feel like she put a lot of thought and she really understands his character, but there's things being held back about him from us, and it makes him very, very interesting. He's probably the most compelling character that we've seen, in my opinion, that we've seen from any of her books. For reference, I read Daughter of No World and then this series. So next up we have Foundry Side. If you are familiar with fantasy in general, I'm sure you've heard of this. I know it is about a thief, and I think there's something to do with like an underground rebellion or something like that with like magical technology, and she has to like make unlikely allies and learn to harness an artifact's power. So I've heard, again, fantastic things about this. This is a fantasy that I've been wanting to get to for a long time, and I'm excited to jump into it. So then we have a fantasy that I have heard nothing about. I actually kind of just saw it on the shelf and was interested in it. It's I'm not sure how to pronounce this name. Kashuli's Dart. It is the first book in a series, and the main character is born into indentured servitude, and she's purchased by a nobleman. I'm not quite sure like what this is about, but it says set in a world of cunning poets, deadly courtiers, heroic traitors, and a truly Machiavellian villainess. This is a novel of grandeur, sacrifice, betrayal, and deeply laid conspiracies. So interested in that one. This is another one that I haven't heard anything about. I just saw it on the shelves, and that is A Dance of Cloaks. The underworld rules the city of Valdorin. Thieves, smugglers, assassin. They fight only for one man. Thren is the greatest assassin of all time. Aaron is his son. He spins a tale of retribution and darkness, and an underworld reaching for ultimate power. says it's a combination of Game of Thrones, sword and sorcery RPGs, and vivid description. So we'll see how that one goes. All right, this is another one that I have picked up previously and I couldn't get into, but I'm back in my romance reading mood, so let's see how it goes. That is A Discovery of Witches. I have gotten maybe 50 pages into this. I think I read the ebook, and sometimes with fantasy, if I switch up my format, it helps me able to get through the story. But this is about a witch who discovers an ancient tome that's said to have a lot of powers, and it brings a lot of interest to her, and she teams up with a vampire. So she's trying to hide her witch identity. Pretty excited about this one. We'll do one more. I can't remember how many I've talked about. Next up, we have Wake of Vultures. I saw this on the shelf, again, something I haven't heard of, but I actually saw the second book in the series and was pretty interested in it, so I decided to pick up the first one. It says, a rich dark fantasy of destiny, death, and the supernatural world hiding beneath the surface. A stranger attacks her. He turns into black sand after she defends herself. The world is full of evil, and now she knows. I'm wondering if it's. I'm wondering. I'm wondering. Is it angels? Is it demons and angels? What is it? We'll find out. Possibly fairies? I don't know. This is like the cover is throwing me off. Okay, so the next question is a book that made me cry, and I haven't cried this year from a book. I don't think. I think I got really close with 7 Days in June and Restore Me, but I don't think I've cried, like actually cried at any books this year. So that's that. Next up, we have The Angel of Crows, another bird book. Alternate world fantasy where angels inhabit every public building and vampires and werewolves walk the streets with human beings in a well-regulated truce. A fantastic utopia except for a few things. Angels can fall, and that fall is like a nuclear bomb. Jack the Ripper stalks the streets. So this sounds like it has a lot going on. It might be like a fantastical mystery. Who knows? Pretty interesting. I don't even know if it's part of a series. So, we'll see. Alright, so then we have The Magicians, and I believe this was actually made into a TV show. I could be incorrect, but if it's based on the TV show is based on this, it's about a kid who discovers that a magical world that he read about in a book is real life, and he is magically connected to it. I really, really, really enjoyed the first season, and then the show really gets weird and goes downhill. So we'll see how the book goes. Hopefully I'll get some sort of resolution to the story that I missed from the show. So, next question is a book that made me happy. So I have a couple of selections for you. They were like 5-star or 4-star reads that I really enjoyed that sort of just made me smile and laugh. We have a manga, which is Chainsaw Man. I've talked about this extensively on my channel. It was one of the first things that I read this year. I gave all of the volumes 5 stars. It's a hilarious and intricate, very well developed world about devils, and the main character Dingy is just fantastic. Very funny. Then we have Heart, Haunt, and Havoc. It is a pretty short romance. It is about a guy who goes to cleanse a haunted person's house, and they have a romance. It's very cute. Both characters are trans. Very cute. Next up, we have A Scoundrel of Her Own. This could have made it as a favorite book of the year, but it's a very nice, swoony, communicative, lovely historical romance. We have Amari and the Great Game, which is the sequel to Amari and the Night Brothers. Really, really liked it. This is a very strong, middle grade, fantastical world school setting, and really enjoying the way this series is going. We have Consider Me, which was sort of weak for me in most aspects of the story, but the hero himself was just an absolute delight to read. And then lastly, we have Sword Heart, which is sort of like a cozy, fantastical, like a little bit horror story about a girl who goes on an expedition to save her own life because her family's trying to marry her off to her cousin, and she ends up summoning a genie when she's trying to kill herself with a magical sword, and they go on an expedition, and it's absolutely delightful. So those are some books that I would definitely recommend if you need some happiness. Next up, we have, I think, the only non-sci-fi fantasy on this list. We have White Horse. This is a horror. It might be a thriller. So her mother mysteriously died. Her father is permanently disabled from a car crash. Her aunt is covering up secrets, and I believe she's looking into the mystery of what happened to her mom. So, horror. It says it's horror, could be thriller, mystery, ghosts, who knows. Next up, we have a Master of Jin. I have read Ring Shout by this author, really liked it. This was a book that was recommended if you really liked Ring Shout. This is in Cairo in 1912. And I'm assuming it has something to do with Jinn. So, it says it's about a woman working for the Ministry of Alchemy, Enchantments, and Supernatural Entities. So, excited for that. Next up, the last question that we have, and somehow I can't count because we have 5 more books. The last question that we have is the community member honorable mention. So if you didn't notice, I have sort of been transitioning my channel away from book only. So likewise, I tend to watch creators that aren't just book only content, more lifestyle videos. So I have a couple of people that I watch a lot of people, but these are people that mention books, talk about books pretty heavily, that I would recommend. So first up, we have Kat Karras. She is a fantastic, very cozy, vlog-centered, bookish channel that I really love, discovered recently. We have Carla Espinoza, very similar, vlog-centered. She talks about books a lot, very cute. We have Basically Reese, who again is another vlog-centered. She focuses on like mental health and like slow vlogs. And then lastly, we have Allison Pages, who is another sort of like getting through life together with books sort of scenario, sort of channel. So we'll talk about the last couple of books that I have, and then we'll wrap the video up. So next up, I got A Clockwork Orange. I am very intimidated by this book. I have not seen the movie, but I've heard it's quite tough. And I think it's something about like a alternate world or something like that. I'm not sure. I'm very intimidated by it. So we'll see how that goes. Next, we have All the Birds in the Sky. This is about 2 kids who meet when they are young. One is obsessed with birds, one builds computers, and then they meet again when they are adults. Next up, we have Piranesi. I don't know how I'm going to feel about this one. All I know is it's weird, and it's about a guy trapped in a labyrinth, and he discovers that there's somebody else in the labyrinth with him. I'm sure you've heard of it. Next up, we have one that I'm sure you've heard of as well, and that is Ninth House by Leapord. I have attempted to read this before. I listened to the audiobook, and I also attempted to read it, and couldn't really get into it, but I want to give it another shot. This is like a dark academia about a girl who goes to Yale, I believe, and she can see ghosts. And she is inducted into a secret society about ghosts or something. And then lastly is probably my most exciting find, and the one I'm most excited to get to, and that is The Stardust Thief. I have heard such amazing things about this, and I believe it is reminiscent of the Davabad trilogy, which is one of my all-time favorite fantasy series. I think it's about Jin. Yeah, she's blackmailed into finding an ancient lamp. And I believe she has to work with the Sultan's son, who she doesn't like. So, very excited about this one. I'm hoping that it is good as everybody says that it is. So, those are all 20 of the books that I got on my little library trip, in addition to sort of a reading check-in for the year. So far, it is the 27th of June, so I have a lot of reading plans left for the year, but I thought it would be nice to do a little check-in. And that is going to be it. I would love to know how your reading is going thus far. If you don't read, I would love to know how your year is going in general. Mine's been a pretty rocky one, and it's not really getting any better, but we do what we have to do. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're looking for more content from me, you can find me on Instagram and Goodreads. You can also subscribe if you're looking for more content like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next one.